Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Marilyn Fleer. I saw Marilyn speak at MAV conference last year, and it was, I think I cried during your presentation. So a few of us were in there, and we're so delighted that you're able to come and share more of your research with us today. So please welcome Marilyn Fleer.
Be my timekeeper, which will be great, fabulous. So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation, Alex. I feel really very pleased to be here and to have met you, but also you'll hear why in a minute, because I also have met the staff, some of the staff at this school, and I've just been blown away. So they're going to be the superstars of this presentation today, actually, through some videos that we've done. But I wanted to, before I begin and talk about any of that, I wanted to first of all, as Andrew did, acknowledge country, and I also pay my respects to elders past and present and emerging. And I also acknowledge the school, because the school has been really important in what I'm going to be presenting today. And these superstars here, so we have, because you can't all see at the bottom, so we have Marissa, Andrew, Katie and Damien, and you've met Andrew already, the principal, and so I want to acknowledge them in particular because when Alex invited me to present, she said, "Oh, can you just do what you did at the MAV conference?" where you cried. And I said, no, we need fresh new content. And do you think the school, because Alex mentioned that this would be hosted at the school, and I said, "Oh, do you think the school would be interested in being part of what we've been doing?" And she said, "Oh, well, I'll ask." And so she asked Marissa, and Marissa said, "Oh yeah, that'd be great." And then I said, "Oh," and because Marissa works with Katie, she said, "I'm sure Katie will be interested." Where's Katie sitting? Somewhere over here, great. And then I said, "Oh, well, part of what we've done in the past is that we've worked on maths and play in a primary school in the early years, but we've done more than that. We've actually worked across through to the senior years, and it'd be amazing if Andrew, where's Andrew? Is he here? Over there, beautiful. Andrew and Damien, where's Damien? Over here, oh sorry, yeah, I'm getting the location. It'd be amazing if we could also say, well, actually, will this evidence-informed model that's come out of the research we've done in the early years, so from birth to 8, could that also actually happen in the senior years? And so somehow Marissa managed to talk Andrew, who talked Damien, into participating. And so our beautiful colleagues from the PlayLab, Rebecca Lewis and Baz Gerald, who's our video ethnographer, came into the school after we did some professional development on our evidence-informed model and captured their pop-up conceptual PlayWorlds. And that's what we're going to feature today. It's been a little bit of a rush, so normally I would have a video that gives an overview, but what I have is the characteristics of the model to walk you through today. So basically what we're covering as part of our roadmap is I'll begin by talking about engagement in mathematics, just very generally, and to locate us, and many of you will be familiar with that model, I'm sure, and then spend the large bulk of the time talking about, well, what is a conceptual play world or real world scenario that's come from our research, through showcasing the brilliant work that's going on in this school. And I just have to tell you that when we interviewed the children of this school are just incredible. Like, I have never seen such respectful children who were supporting each other to talk about mathematics in such a rich and meaningful way. It's just an absolute credit to the school. So I just want to put that out there. This is a bit of a special school here. And then I want to pull it together and talk briefly at the end to locate the conceptual play worlds in the broader models of play and in the broader models of mathematics playful learning, to give you a sense of where it sits and why I think it matters. And there's a little bit of theory in that part. For those of you who are like me, Vygotsky nerds, might enjoy that part. And if you're not Vygotsky nerds, then that's okay, it's only short. So just enjoy. But I'll do my best to also be engaging with that content. So that's the roadmap. But the focus really is actually talking very much about imagination in play and imagination in mathematics, and why imagination really matters for children's learning in mathematics, but also children's development of play. And to take us there to that third space, I thought I'll just do this location around the engagement in mathematics. So what's going on and what can we do to make a difference here? So the suggestion in this document, which again I'm sure you already all know, and the conference is so much about this, is to achieve quality and excellence in STEM more broadly, but of course we're talking mathematics. Teachers and educators who are able to excite children and young people about STEM, and we're talking mathematics today, and demonstrate the relevance of STEM learning. So this, and it's really like what Alex was talking about, it's the relevance, it's the engagement, and the excitement. And so that's why the E in STEM is about engagement, emotions, excitement. There's many E words that I think capture what we want to really try and achieve. And as a community, we have, as Alex said, we can share really fantastic ideas with each other because, you know, we are all doing special things. So what I want to do is just speak a little bit now about the beautiful article that came out through the association and the Journal of the Common Denominator. And this was I think it was the first issue of the journal this year, where Catherine Attard has said really around uncovering what engages the learner. And she said student engagement with mathematics has continued to challenge us for a long time, so that's a no-brainer. But what she does recommend is to consider what might be the new strategies, what might be the programs and the ways of engaging the learner, so focusing on that dimension. Whilst we might individually have fabulous programs around the specific concepts that we want to take forward, shining the light on that engagement is what she's recommending as being really important. And she says very poignantly that in the process of covering the curriculum, because I know that that's always the huge pressure. I know that there is this constant battle between curriculum areas and fighting about, you know, how many hours, how many minutes, and so on, and covering the whole curriculum, and then the reduction that we saw. So there are all these things happening in our lives that we know about. But she says uncovering what engages the learner and taking that forward through open-ended tasks, rich tasks, problem solving, investigations, inquiry-based learning, and more. And I think there's a beautiful little flyer that Alex has provided you with in your little kit, which talks about the 4 proficiencies as verbs: understanding, reasoning, problem solving, and fluency. And there might be some words in there that also sit within this, but I'll come back to that. But she also says that, and this is the bit that I find really very powerful, as she talks about student engagement in mathematics as more than being on task, but she talks about being in task. And I think this is kind of a really nice shift because the in task really picks up the engagement part. And that's where I want to bring forward today in my presentation, being in task through this evidence-informed model that our superstar teachers here at the school actually came up with their own models of, which we're going to have a look at. And there is, if anybody is interested, I can send it through to Alex, because I think I forgot to do this, because I checked your little, and it's not in there, so it's probably me, but we have this beautiful little booklet that actually describes the characteristics, and the cover looks like this, and this is the overview page, which has the 5 characteristics of a conceptual play world in it. And you're very welcome to when we send it, it's a nice PDF, so you can print it and use it as a planning pro forma. If what I share with you today gets you excited about mathematics in a new way, and of course it has, you know, spaces in it to write, and you can also share that with your colleagues. And if you're a lead in some way in your school or you run professional development, you're very welcome to draw on this material. But what is a conceptual play world or real world scenario, and how does that link to mathematics? So that takes me to the next part of the presentation, which is really the core of the presentation today. And in this presentation, I'm going to now take you through, and I'll just get to my notes so that I am efficient with the time and stay on task really well myself, in task maybe. And so what I want to do is really begin by talking a little bit about this evidence-informed model as a bit of an overview, and then maybe later using, or even now if you wished, to use these terms that are on this sheet. As I present the videos of our superstars today, you might find that sheet useful to just make little notes about, or it might be that you make notes about these particular characteristics, because the first thing I want to say is in this evidence-informed model, which has come from essentially very focused research over 10 years. So it's come from practice. It's been about working with teachers in a range of settings to build this model. And now we're rolling it out as part of the Australian Research Council funded project, which is why we are able to, through Monash, do a lot of professional development for free, and we have online materials about this model. But what I wanted to stress is this booklet is like a planning document that you take to work on for each of the characteristics of the model. But in the implementation, of course, it's very different. It's of course integrated, and it's very much a living experience. But the 5 characteristics, so I'll give you the overview before we look at the video. The first characteristic is all around selecting the story. What might be a children's book that's dynamic and engaging with lots of drama in it, that can become this imaginary world that children and teachers jump into and become part of. So the first characteristic is all around selecting the story, and I'll give you more details on what would be good elements of that. Then the second characteristic that's about the planning is actually, well, what might be the space in the school or the classroom that might create this imaginary world that we would all go into? Does it need to be like the lab? Does it need to be a separate space? What does it look like, and how? And then the third characteristic is planning. How do we as teachers and children enter this imaginary world, and how do we exit it so that we're all together being part of this imaginary situation? And so that takes us to then the fourth characteristic, which of course is your what's the term? Bread and butter, your bread and butter in mathematics, which is actually what is the authentic problem that arises that needs math solutions so that the imaginary play can continue. So the idea is very much around what's meaningful, engaging, and is fun for the children to do, but is actually still very serious mathematics, and that the children really want to help the characters in the story solve these problems. So that's our fourth characteristic. And our fifth characteristic for the planning document is actually what role do we take as teachers? Are we going to be a play partner and be one of the characters? Can we be a character that is new to the story? Can we invite in the school principal to be part of this and become a character in the story and set up a real interesting challenge? So it's planning through how the teachers are actually going to be playing, but it's not scripted like a play, but it is very much planned in relation to those characteristics. So that's the overview. This is the booklet, and so we're going to begin with our 2 superstars, Marissa and Katie, in the early years, and then I'm going to spend a little longer because I'm going to share with you a little more detail about each of these characteristics as you've actually seen it in action, and then we're going to look at, and I'm going to get you to be thinking about what's the difference between the early years and the year 5, 6s. What do you notice? So you can't be sitting there sleeping, you have to be thinking. And I know Marissa has got a session at the end of the day about children's books. So we're going to, for those of you who come to Marissa's session, we're going to make you share some of that